It's been a lifeline for Yemen, but the port of Hodeidah is now the centre of the civil war. Government forces and a Saudi-Emirati coalition are preparing an all-out offensive against Houthi rebels. What will it mean for aid deliveries and for victims of one of the world's worst humanitarian disasters? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Elizabeth Puranam. For more than 3 years, the people of Yemen have endured war, hunger and disease. The UN estimates more than 10,000 people have been killed and 3/4 of the population depend on international aid. Now, fighting for control of Hodeidah could make the situation even worse. The Red Sea port is the gateway for 70% of Yemen's food supplies and half its fuel needs. It's also the point of entry for medicines and other essentials needed by 22 million people just to survive. The UN and the US have warned against an attack by the Saudi-Emirati coalition fighting Houthi rebels. Well, let's bring in our panel now. From Sana'a is Hussein al-Bukaiti, a pro-Houthi journalist, and via Skype. Also from Sana'a is Mohsin Siddiqui, country director for Yemen with Oxfam International. A very warm welcome to both of you. Mr. Siddiqui, let me start with you. What would an assault on the port of Hodeidah mean for what is already the world's worst humanitarian crisis, and also for the some 600,000 people who live in the city of Hodeidah?
Well, Yemen is already the world's worst humanitarian crisis, is at the brink of, famine. And Hodeidah is one of the principal ports of the country, through which the food supplies, medicines, and other essentials come through. So if, the fighting at the moment, if reaches Hodeidah, and then if this lifeline is cut off, it does, clearly indicates that, there will be, stop and cut off of this food, medicine, and other essentials, which will have, further impact on the populations, and already in this world worst ever humanitarian crisis, due to these 3 years of war.
Mr. Bukaiti, the UN's envoy for Yemen, Martin Griffiths, is in the capital, Sana'a. It's thought to actually broker a deal to avert a possible assault on Hodeidah, under which the UN would take control of the port. Would the Houthis agree to that?
No, I don't think that the Houthi will accept to hand over Hodeidah port or Hodeidah city, because this leak request that the UN has asked to hand over Hodeidah port, it was not from this UN envoy. It was as well before, it was from the Ismail Wuld Sheikh, previous UN envoy to Yemen. And it's really strange to ask from one side to withdraw from a city, because as you say, is one of the last humanitarian line into Yemen. Instead of doing that, you can ask the Saudi to stop targeting the city. This actually show you the bias of the United Nations, if it's true that they have requested for Houthi to withdraw from Hodeidah port. But I'm sure they will not accept that, because if they withdraw from this city, then next time the UN will ask them to withdraw from Sana'a, to withdraw from other cities. So you have to stop, either have a ceasefire, not to target the port, leave this lifeline going as it used to be, instead of targeting it by the Saudi-led coalition.
Mr. Bukaiti, because Hodeidah is such a crucial lifeline for the millions of people in Yemen, wouldn't it be better if it was controlled by a neutral organisation like the United Nations rather than the Houthis?
Look, the Houthi are Yemenis, and then the Saudi-led coalition is made from mercenary, even from Colombia. So how can you accept it that you leave a city because a foreign coalition is attacking the city. This is just nonsense, and I don't think it will be accepted. And Yemeni people as well will not accept that the Houthi will agree to that. There is a war south of Hodeidah, and if the Saudi will not stop, the Houthi will continue its effort, will continue its fighting to protect that port. And on the top of that, how can we guarantee that Hodeidah city will not be like in a chaos like the same in Aden? I think that the UN should actually take over Aden port and Aden city to secure it, because it's not secured now. Al-Qaeda is running free there. There are many attacks and suicide attacks almost every week, assassination every day. And on Hodeidah city, the only attack that's happening there is by the Saudi-led airstrike. This show you the difference between security in Hodeidah and in Aden. So I think they should actually control Aden, not Hodeidah.
But it is Hodeidah that is the point of focus now. Mr. Siddiqui, who do you think should be in control of this vital port at this time? Do you think that the Houthis should give up their control to the United Nations?
Well, in my view, I mean, we are humanitarian organization, so we are really concerned that if the lifeline is cut, then that will have a catastrophe, and I mean, more family have to basically bury their loved ones. There will be more hunger, more will be deaths. We are really concerned that the fighting stop, and the international community put pressure on both the warring parties to return to the peace talks and the fighting and find a political solution. So, I mean, in our view, I mean, we want a discussion, conversation, and through which we can find a political solution.
And we might be closer to that political solution, because as all of this is playing out, it seems there could be a breakthrough in ending the conflict. The Reuters news agency says it's seen a draft proposal for a peace plan written by the United Nations. It says the plan includes a call on the Houthi rebels to give up their ballistic missiles, which they've been firing into Saudi Arabia. And in return, the Saudi-Emirati coalition would end its bombing campaign against the Houthis, which has been going on for more than 3 years. The document also reportedly includes proposals for a transitional government, which would involve the Houthis. Mr. Bukaiti, I'm sure you're aware of this proposed peace plan. What do you make of it? Do you think that the Houthis are willing, are ready to give up their ballistic missiles for a seat at the table in a transitional government?
I just want to mention that when head of political council Mahdi al-Mashat in Sana'a, when he has met the UN envoy, he said, like I'm quoting him, he said, we have our hand on the trigger, but as well we have the other hand welcoming any peace or serious peace talk with all parties. So it was clear message that we will not hand over our weapons. And this leak by Reuters, I think they just want to make the breaking news. I think they are baseless because I don't think that the UN will actually dare to ask the Houthi to give up. They didn't say like to stop ballistic missile in exchange, in return of stopping Saudi campaign. They said to give up their ballistic missiles in return of the Saudi to end their campaign. The Saudi can switch back their air campaign on Yemen in a matter of seconds. But if you give your ballistic missiles, how can you, if the Saudi didn't, change their mind? This is the only weapons that the Houthi have to hurt Saudi. So I don't think they will actually even think of handing it. And we remember what happens before the invasion of Iraq. The UN has asked Saddam to hand over his weapons. And hours before the invasion, he has destroyed one of the last long-range ballistic missiles. And what happened? As soon as he destroyed his ballistic missiles, the United States has invaded Iraq. So it will be here the same. And I'm sure they will not hand over any weapons.
So then if they don't hand over, Mr. Bukaiti, if they don't hand over their weapons, do they think that they can still win this war militarily? Because if they don't hand over their weapons, how do they expect to stop this war?
The one who we should ask him to stop the war is the one who started the war. When Houthi took over power, either you called him a coup or not, it was an internal matter. There are many coups around the world. No one will interfere military to stop it. So all this crisis, the cholera, the outbreak, and this humanitarian crisis in Yemen, it started after the Saudi-led coalition war in Yemen. It didn't start because of the Houthi coup. And as I said, you cannot hand over your weapons while you're still under attack, under blockade.
But unfortunately,
and no one actually can accept that.
But unfortunately for the Houthis, Mr. Bukaiti, it is the government of exiled President Abdurabu Mansour Hadi that is supported by the Saudi-led coalition that you speak of, that is the internationally recognized government of Yemen, and not the Houthis that the international community recognizes as the leaders in the country. Mr. Siddiqui, if I can come to you, Mr. Bukaiti was speaking about the humanitarian problems that the country is facing. So, after more than 3 years of war, what is at stake here for the people of Yemen? I know that your organization said on Wednesday that Yemen is one step away from famine now and that millions could be affected.
Obviously, this is really, really obvious. You can imagine that the 22 million people are in need of humanitarian aid and even protection assistance. As I said, also that the public servants, they have not been, paid for their salaries for the last 2 years. People do not have a measure or even mean to get an income. School being closed for years. 46% of health facilities are non-functional. And then the cholera outbreak was one of the world's worst ever, that killed basically over 2,000 people and recorded over 1 million cases of cholera. And then if both the parties, the warring parties, do not stop fighting, if they do not listen, then it's basically international community's responsibility to put pressure on both the warring parties to end this fighting and start peace negotiation. And we are also concerned that in the peace plan, there is no participation of civil society organizations and women's. And in the world, we have seen where women's voice and the civil society voices have been heard, the peace basically stays more than 15 years. And now this new situation, while 4 or 5 front lines active, and then the new basically movement to a Hodeidah, and if both the parties do not listen, then it would really be a catastrophe, in the end, I would say.
Even more catastrophic.
So military, I don't think there is a military solution.
Mr. Bukaiti,
all parties have to find a political solution.
And so, Mr. Bukaiti, what will it take for the Houthis to agree to a political solution, one that the United Nations is now reported to be proposing?
I think if there is, they will only accept a non-biased plan. There must be first a ceasefire in all fronts.
But that is what they're proposing. The United Nations is proposing a ceasefire. And when you say a non-biased plan, what is biased about this plan? And if it's not coming from the United Nations, who would propose this non-biased plan?
Yeah, look, this plan, it has not been made public. We are talking about a leaked plan by Reuters. It could be a big lie, just to make the news. But to look into this plan, when I say biased, is when you ask one group to give up their ballistic missile, in return that other side will stop bombing you. The only thing that guarantee that you can actually maybe fight the Saudi back is the weapons that you have. How can you hand it? That's why I'm saying this.
But do you not trust that the United Nations and the international community, as a backer of this plan, would guarantee it, would prevent further Saudi-led coalition attacks if the Houthis were to give up their ballistic weapons?
Okay.
Is there no trust in the United Nations or the international community, Mr. Bukaiti?
To be honest with you, me personally, I think the Houthi, most Yemeni, we came to a conclusion that we don't trust all international community and especially the UN. Why? I will explain to you. Before in Muscat, about 2 years ago, there was a plan, and before the Houthi accepted the 2216 resolution, they were told that if you accept this, we will guarantee that the war will stop, and then we will go in how to implement the 2216. What happened? They have accepted, and what happened? The Saudi continued its war. That's why when I say biased, because this is what the United Nations has been doing.
So, Mr. Bukaiti, if you can't trust the United Nations for those reasons,
to ask the Houthi for ceasefire.
Who do you see as a mediator in this conflict that has to end?
I think there should be talks between the Houthi, between parties in Sana'a, including the Houthi and Saudi Arabia. This first thing. And the United Nations, if it wants to be to mediate in this war, they should at least mention the Saudi as one side. And when I say biased, I can dare, I mean anyone watching me now, to bring me a document from any UN envoy into Yemen or UN Security Council that has mentioned the Saudi as a part of this war. How can you mediate if you're not mentioning the Saudi? And the Saudi is leading this coalition against Yemen. That's the proof that the UN and all UN plan are totally biased. Just mention the Saudi as part of this war, and then the Saudi will be held responsible if they break any ceasefire, if they do not accept any agreement that will come in the future. Do
all
that,
right.
and I think we will reach a solution soon.
All right, Mr. Bukaiti. Mr. Siddiqui, I'd like to give you the last word on this. No doubt you and your organisation and all other aid groups are desperately hoping for a solution. You know, what is your message to the warring parties and the international community?
I think I have already mentioned, it's basically three things. The first one, both the warring parties, they have to end the fighting without putting any precondition. The first one. The second one, they have to agree that without any precondition, they are, going back to the peace negotiation. The third one is basically in order to establish a trust between, among different warring parties, I think the UN and international communities have to, lead and coordinate an inclusive and participatory, peace negotiation processes, including both civil society, women, and both, in Sana'a and also in other forums. And it may take number of, peace, conversation. I think the third one, until the total ceasefire, end of fighting happen, and then peace is established. We want to see that the humanitarian agencies do not face any problems in providing humanitarian services to the people in need. And then I think the last one would be there should be a political solution. That what will be the transitional, let's say mechanism. Once a peace, is established.
All right, Mr. Siddiqui, thank you very much for that. That is Mohsen Siddiqui in Sana'a, and also in Sana'a, Hussein Al-Bukaiti. Thank you both very much. And now joining us from London is Mohammed Jume, a Yemeni journalist with Al-Quds newspaper. Mr. Jume, the US is among a number of countries and organisations that are warning the Emiratis not to try and seize control of the port of Hodeidah. Will the Emiratis refrain, do you think, from launching an attack which will further devastate the humanitarian situation?
Well, I think the problem with Hodeidah is very complicated. We have up to maybe 1 million Yemenis living in the city, and it's a small city, and it's the most important city in the Red Sea, on the Red Sea coast. About 70% of the import of the Yemenis and the human aid comes from this port in the west of Yemen.
And it is for all of these reasons, Mr. Jume, that the US, that aid organisations, the UN, are asking the Emiratis not to launch this attack. So do you think that they will take heed of that call?
Well, I think they are going to advance until they besiege the city, the whole city from the over the land. And they are going to put more pressure on the Houthis inside the city. I don't think they are going to take it over, because it will cost a lot of things in terms of human sufferings on the Yemenis in the city and on the Yemenis outside, even in the capital of Sana'a, because of the humanitarian aids will be cut off if they attack the city.
Mr. Jume, there are reports that the UN's envoy for Yemen is trying to broker a deal so that there isn't an assault on Hodeidah and could possibly see the UN take control of the port. What do you make of that? Do you think that the UN should be in control of this important port?
Well, that was a plan more than 1 year ago, when the Saudi-led coalition suggested to the United Nations to take the port of Hodeidah as something, or as a solution, because The Houthis will never give it to the government forces, and will also not give it to the Saudi-led coalitions. But unfortunately, at the time, the United Nations refused to take it because they said they lack the logistics to control the Hodeidah. Now, I'm not quite sure if things change because we have a new plan which depends on taking away the ballistic missiles of the Houthis and from all the factions, military factions in the country. But whether or not this plan is going to be implemented, I think it is too early to suggest that.
Yes, these are just reports so far, and we heard from the pro-Houthi journalist Hussein al-Bukaiti earlier, who said that the Houthis would not be giving up their ballistic missiles because they don't trust the UN and the international community to guarantee that the Saudis will not continue their bombing campaign. Do you think that the Saudi-led coalition is ready now to sit down with the Houthis for this proposed negotiated settlement, for a ceasefire, for a transitional government later on?
Well, this is, this plan is not new. It's similar to the plan offered and suggested by Mr. Wald al-Sheikh, the former one, the former UN envoy to Yemen, sorry. While the Houthis do not trust the international community and do not trust the Saudi-led coalition and the Yemeni governments, again, the Yemeni governments and the Saudi-led coalition do not trust the Houthis because there were more than 100 agreements signed by the Houthis and some local leaders like tribal leaders and military leaders in the past, and within some politicians during the war between the regime of Saleh, the former president, and the Houthis, and no one of these agreements has been fulfilled or implemented. So there is no trust, there is no confidence, there is no trust between all parties in Yemen. It's not the matter of the Houthis do not trust the government. The government also do not trust the Houthis, and I don't think in this situation this new plan will go further.
So what will it take then, Mr. Jume, because there's so much at stake in Yemen, so many millions of lives at stake, to build trust, to actually get to the point where all sides are willing to negotiate?
Well, the problem is all parties in Yemen are thinking that they are still strong to fight. From the government side, they think that they are making good advance in Hodeidah towards the city. They are now just a few kilometers from the port, and there is no point from their point of view of sitting around like a negotiation table discussing the issues with the Houthis. And from the other side, the Houthis are feeling that they are not defeated and they have to fight until the last moment. So it's difficult unless the parties in Yemen, the factions in Yemen, those military militants in the country, the government and the Houthis, come to an agreement or come to an idea that they will never achieve anything with war, with weapon, and the only solution could be the peaceful solution. Unless they come to this point, then I don't think there is any sort of lights by the end of the tunnel.
Mr. Jume, just very briefly, what will it take for them to come to that point, though?
I think the international pressure on them, on the government and on the Houthis. There is the 2216 by the resolution of the United Nations, the resolution saying frankly that the Houthis must give up the weapons which was belonging to the army, the Yemeni army. Are the Houthis going to give it up? You said that the Hussein al-Bukaiti said they will never give it because they have no trust in the government. Yeah. So if this is the case, if this is the situation, the only pressure will go on to the government. There is no pressure onto the Houthis because they are militia. They cannot pressurize them.
All right, Mr. Jume, thank you very much for that. That is Mohammed Jume joining us live from London. And to our earlier guests too, Hussein al-Bukaiti and Mohsin Siddiqui, both of whom had joined us from the Yemeni capital, Sana'a. And thank you too for watching. You can see the programme again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, to go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Elizabeth Puranam, and the whole team here, bye for now.